On those mornings you struggle with getting up, keep this thought in mind. I'm awakening to the work of a human being. Why then am I annoyed that I'm going to do what I'm made for, the very things for which I was put into this world? Or was I made for this, to snuggle under the covers and keep warm? It's so pleasurable. Were you then made for pleasure? In short, to be coddled or to exert yourself? Marcus Aurelius. Today we're getting into Aviation Weather Services. Here's the battle plan. We'll start with the scenario like we always do. You'll have the opportunity to share what you've been working on. We've got Aviation Weather Services, our quiz, and some homework. Here we go. So let's watch the video and discuss what might have gone wrong or what we can do better. So we're departing a non-towered field. First of all, what are we going to be, what are our radio calls as we depart a non-towered field? They're going to be, this is Jefferson traffic, by the way. Jefferson traffic, Cessna 172 Sierra Papa, departing runway 9, and then our direction, let's say eastbound departure, Jefferson traffic. Remember, every time we use the radio at a non-towered field, we want to bracket our radio call with the airfield that we're talking to, so that anybody in the area knows where we are. So Jefferson traffic, that's the airfield, Jefferson County International. Our call sign, what we plan on doing, and then bracket it again with the airfield, Jefferson traffic. So let's watch. All right, looks like we're departing. Lights, camera, action. Full power. Airspeed's alive. We're at 40 knots here. Want to be at 55 to rotate. There's 55, rotate. And we typically climb either at 65 for VX or 79 for VY. And it looks like we're having a hard time getting up to that airspeed. Any thoughts? So in this situation, we couldn't get up to our airspeed once we were airborne. And this can happen for a number of different reasons. In this case, it happened to be that we failed to raise our landing gear before we departed. I don't know if you noticed it, but at the very beginning, you can barely see it. There is a part, yeah, right there. Our flaps are full, 30 degrees, and so it made it difficult for us to get up to our airspeed. So the fix is basically follow your before takeoff checklists, and in general, just follow your checklists to make sure that everything is in good working order before we depart. All right. So take a moment now to recap your most recent flight. What went well? What could have gone better? What was your favorite part of the flight? And what you plan on doing next? And moving on. So we're going to get into Aviation Weather Services today. So anytime we go fly, there's a checklist that we like to use to get everything we need on our kneeboard. So NOTAMs, so we use the acronym Northwest Craft to remember that. So NOTAMs, weather, known delays, runways, alternates, fuel, and takeoff and landing distance calculations. Today we're going to be covering this weather briefing part here. Weather briefing, you're going to want to gather all the information vital to the nature of the flight. This includes appropriate weather briefing from a specialist at a flight service station. We can either use 1-800-WEATHER-BRIEF, we can call them, or we can go to 1-800-WEATHERBRIEF.com to get our weather briefing. I like to use the website because then I can look at all the weather charts and information and really have a good understanding rather than just talking to somebody. So first of all, if you do call a briefer, the first thing you want to do is identify yourself as a pilot. And that actually reminds me of a joke. How do you know somebody is a pilot? Well, don't worry, they'll tell you. So you want to tell them you're a pilot, you want to tell them the route and your intended destination, whether you're flying VFR or IFR, what kind of aircraft you're flying, and your departure time and route. You always want to get a standard brief before you go fly. It gives pretty much all the necessary information you need. An outlook brief is usually given for a flight 6 hours or more in the future, and an abbreviated brief is kind of a supplement or to update your weather brief. So update a previous briefing. It's usually limited to a specific information. So standard, outlook, and abbreviated. So outlook is for 6 hours in advance. Standard is standard, of course, and an abbreviated is to update a briefing you've already gotten. Let's talk about METAR. This stands for Meteorological Aerodrome Report, and it's a routine weather observation. And they look like this. It starts with a 4-letter ICAO station identifier. This is for Painfield, KPAE. The 5th day of the month at 17:53 Zulu. The winds are variable at 4 knots, 3 statute miles of visibility. Sky conditions are broken at 600, overcast at 5,000, temperature 11, dew point 10. Altimeter setting is 29.92 inches of mercury. And just real quick, if we see a temperature dew point spread like this, what can we expect at this field? Typically, a small temperature dew point spread is going to be indicative of clouds or low clouds or fog. So the METAR is pretty much always given in the same format. So why don't you give it a shot now? Read this METAR. I'll give you a couple of seconds and then I'll go over it. Okay, so Painfield again. The 6th day of the month at 21:53 Zulu. The winds are 270 at 8 knots, gusting to 12 knots, 10 statute miles visibility. The clouds are few at 4,200, scattered at 5,500, overcast at 8,000. The temperature is 13, the dew point is 9, and the altimeter setting is 29.79 inches of mercury. And again, go ahead, give it a shot. You can pause it here, by the way. All right, that's Painfield again. The 7th day of the month at 16:53 Zulu, variable at 4 knots, that's the wind, 10 statute miles visibility. The clouds are broken at 900, overcast at 4,700, temperature 11, dew point 9, altimeter setting is 29.96 inches of mercury. Next, let's talk about PIREPs. A PIREP is a pilot weather report. This is transmitted directly from us in the cockpit, and we send it up to an air traffic controller to update anything that's going on in the area. It is a standard format, so you can kind of get used to interpreting them. Here are all the abbreviations that you're gonna see. It might be worth it taking time to study this chart. Moving on. So what type of brief would you obtain if your proposed flight is 6 hours in the future? An Outlook briefing will be what you want. If you needed to update your standard brief, what type of brief would you obtain? An abbreviated brief. Excellent. Let's talk about aviation area forecasts. This usually covers several states around 3,000 square miles, and it gives us information about VMC, or visual meteorological conditions. It tells us about clouds, general weather conditions, and it is given 3 times a day. There's a 12-hour forecast and a 6-hour categorical outlook. And they are in 4 sections. There's the communication and product header section, the precautionary statements, the synopsis and synopsis statement section, VFR clouds and weather section, and it looks like this. And this is what they look like. So here are the areas that we really care about. So how often are area forecasts published? 3 times a day. There's a 12-hour forecast and a 6-hour categorical outlook. Now let's move on to the TAF. This is a terminal aerodrome forecast. These are routine. If you see a TAF AMD, that's an amended forecast. And they're very similar to the METAR, actually. We've got the ICAO station identifier, PAIN. 30th day of the month at 0547 Zulu. Let's see. This is good from the 30th day of the month from 06 on one day to 06 on the next day. This is the day and time 1 and time 2. The winds are variable at 4 knots, 3 miles visibility, scattered at 4,000, overcast at 15,000. Temporarily between 21 and 24, there's going to be rain showers. That's SHRA. And then from 02, 100 at 10 knots, greater than 6 miles visibility, overcast at 2,000, becoming, let's see, from 0 to 306, no significant weather, and then broken at 2,000. That's NSW is no significant weather. It's a lot of code, but after a while you get used to reading them. They're not too bad, so take some time to study these. So here we got PAIN, the 30th day of the month at 0545 Zulu. From the 30th day at 06 to 06 the next day, winds are variable at 4. 3 miles visibility, scattered at 4,000, overcast 15,000, temporarily 21 to 24 rain showers. Some less obvious sections here, worth checking it out. So let's review. What is a TAF? It is a terminal aerodrome forecast. Now take some time to interpret the following. And you can pause it here. So this is Payne, the 29th day of the month at 6:45 Zulu. It's good from the 29th day at 6 to the next day at 06. Winds are variable at 5, 6 miles visibility, scattered at 5,000, overcast at 15,000. Temporarily between 20 and 23, it's going to be rain showers from 0 to 210 knots. Correction, 210 at 10 knots. That's the direction, and velocity greater than 6 miles. Overcast at 3,000, becoming from 03 to 06, no significant weather, and broken at 2,000 feet. Let's move on to weather depiction charts. This is an outline of the United States depicting sky conditions at the time stated on the chart. So we've got different symbology here: cold fronts, warm fronts, occluded fronts, and stationary fronts. And if you remember, cold fronts tend to shovel underneath the warm air that they're replacing. Warm fronts tend to ride on top of the colder air. Occluded front is going to be a cold front coming in underneath a warm front or warm air mass. So cold, warm, cold, and then a stationary front. That's basically when you've got a front that's just not moving. It's just stationary there. And this is kind of what they look like. Here are weather depiction charts. We've got warm fronts over here, high pressure, low pressure. These are troughs. Oh, these little lines here are isobars. They show you lines of equal pressure. There's a cold front. What else? Yeah, here are the circulation patterns of high and low pressure areas. High pressure tends to be clockwise and pressed down, while low pressure areas tend to go in anti-clockwise or counterclockwise, excuse me, and they tend to rise. Yeah, so there's that. Let's see what else. Oh yeah, let's review. What do these symbols mean? The blue one with icicles is a cold front. The warm, I gave it away. The red one is warm front. Purple, occluded, and stationary. There you go. You got it. All right, continuing with our weather depiction charts, you might see a little station circle here. This tells us a lot of information. We've got our total sky cover. The more filled in it is, the more obscured the sky is, essentially. It gives us wind speed. These little barbs tell us how fast the wind is blowing, the direction the wind is blowing. It's blowing from the top left to the bottom right, or from northwest to southeast. Temperature, dew point, the weather, sea level pressure, the change in pressure, and the pressure tendency. So if you just see a circle, it's calm. One little barb is 5. A longer barb is 10. 15 knots here, so 10 plus 5 knots. A little pendant or triangle is 50 knots. So this would be 60 knots there. This is taken from Sky Vector. You can kind of see what the winds were doing on this day. This is the winds coming from this direction at 10, 20, 35 knots right here. So 35 knot winds from the southeast. And you can see they are coming from the northwest over the Pacific Ocean here. 20 knots, 30 knots, 25, 30. Over here, 60 knots. Yeah. Yeah, so just remember, the wind is kind of like an arrow, right? So if you've got the feathers back here, the wind is blowing in this direction. And a pendant is 50 knots, one long line is 10, and one small line is 5 knots. Here's a current weather depiction chart. Very similar. Here are warm and cold fronts, troughs, sky condition. The more shaded in, the more the sky is covered. There's a tropical storm here. Remember, these are lines of equal pressure, isobars. And low pressure, high pressure. In reality, you should just go and study these guys. Go on to 1-800-weatherbrief.com and go check it out and see what they look like. Let's see. Surface analysis charts look very similar. Give us information about precipitation. Yeah, so that's about it. Let's run into our quiz. If you want to take 5 minutes to jot down what you can remember, that'd be good for your retention. Otherwise, let's get into it. What is the purpose of the rudder on an airplane? To control yaw. To get a complete weather briefing for the planned flight, the pilot should request a standard brief. To update a previous weather briefing, a pilot should request an abbreviated brief. You plan to phone a weather briefing facility for pre-flight weather information. You should identify yourself as a pilot, like we like to do. For aviation purposes, a ceiling is defined as the height above the Earth's surface of the lowest broken or overcast layer or vertical visibility into an obscuration. What are the current conditions depicted for Chicago Midway Airport, KMDW? Sky 700 feet overcast, visibility 1.5 statute miles visibility, and rain. Which of the reporting stations have VFR weather? And a little hint with these guys, I like to eliminate the ones, systematically eliminate them. So if this one says all, so I just need to find one that isn't to rule this guy out. These both have KINK and KBOI, and then the only difference is KJFK and KLAX. So I would look at these two first. If either of these two are not VFR, then we can kind of rule things out. And in this case, it's C, KINK, KBOI, and KLAX. If the terrain elevation is 1,295 feet MSL, what is the height above ground level of the base of the ceiling? (505 feet AGL). With respect to the certification of airmen, which are categories of aircraft? Airplane, rotorcraft, glider, and lighter than air. Which V-speed represents maximum flap extended speed? VFE. How long does the airworthiness of an aircraft remain valid? As long as the aircraft is maintained and operated as required by the Federal Aviation Regulations. Which statement relates to Bernoulli's principle? Air traveling faster over the curved upper surface of an airfoil causes lower pressure on the top surface. Who may perform preventative maintenance on an aircraft and approve it for return service? A private or commercial pilot. Which operation would be described as preventative maintenance? Servicing landing gear wheel bearings. When must a current pilot certificate be in the pilot's personal possession or readily accessible in the aircraft? Anytime when acting as a pilot in command or as a required crew member. A third-class medical certificate is issued to a 36-year-old pilot on August 10th of this year. To exercise the privileges of a private pilot certificate, the medical certificate will be valid until midnight on August 31st, 5 years later. If a private pilot had a flight review on October 30th of this year, when is the next flight review required? October 31st, 2 years later. Your brother wants you to take him flying. You must have made at least 3 takeoffs and 3 landings in your aircraft within the preceding 90 days. You got it. What exception, if any, permits a private pilot to act as pilot in command of an aircraft carrying passengers who pay for the flight? If a donation is made to a charitable organization for the flight. The base and tops of the overcast layer reported by a pilot are 7,200 and 8,900 feet MSL. Remember, we're looking at the overcast layer, not the broken layer. To best determine general forecast weather conditions covering a flight information region, the pilot should refer to aviation area forecasts. The Chicago FA forecast section is valid until the 25th at... I'll give you a second to look this one over. (0800 Zulu). What is the outlook for the southern half of Indiana after 0700? VFR down here. In the TAF for KMEM, what does SHRA stand for? Rain showers. In the TAF from KOKC, the clear sky becomes overcast at 2,000 feet during the forecast period between 2200 and 2400 Zulu. All right, we made it. So I would continue reading the Airplane Flying Handbook and the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge. I'm going to post a flight plan brief here in a couple of days. Start working on your flight plans and get used to building your own flight plans. Remember the Northwest Craft acronym, and then anything that might be pertinent to the mission that you're planning. Keep testing yourself. Go check out this free website for free FAA exams. And then if you have any feedback for me, I would love to hear it. And here are my references. And thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next week.